Hello, and welcome to the InPowered Women Podcast. This is where we spotlight unstoppable women who are not only excelling in business, but thriving in life, lifting others up, blazing new trails, and making space for the next generation of female leaders. I'm your host, Sharon Lee, and I'm so glad you're joining us today. Hello, and welcome to the InPowered Women Podcast. I am Sharon Lee with Pinnacle Strategic Advisors, and we are ready for the next podcast, and I am so excited about my next guest. But before we get to her, I'd like to thank our sponsor. This episode is proudly supported by Heidi Moore and the team at Skiers Marine. For years, Skiers Marine has helped families enjoy life on the water with incredible boats and a team that truly loves the boating community. Heidi, thank you for supporting the InPowered Women Podcast and the women who lead and inspire. And be sure to check them out at the Lake Lanier Boat Show at Margaritaville the weekend of April 24th through 26th. And with that, I bring you Sharon Lee Thony. Hey, how are you?
Hi, Sharon Lee. It's good to be here with you.
It is so funny about the whole name thing. So I feel like we've got to start there, right?
Let's start there. Yep.
Let's start there. Mm-hmm. So I am taking a continuing education class through University of Georgia. And one of our first Zoom meetings or whatever, I look up on camera and my professor shares my name, Sharon Lee. And so you're in my Slack channel. And so I sent you a message just totally spontaneously and said, I have absolutely no agenda, but I must know you since we share a name. Let's get on a call. And so we jumped on a call and we had slotted like 30 minutes for that. And I think we ended up talking about an hour and a half.
Yeah, I think it was close to 2 hours or something that day. Yeah, we definitely went way over. We had a blast.
But you know what? There's just some people that are just your people, right?
Or just people with your same name. So I was Sharon Lee for most of my life. Like Thony is my married last name. So I was literally Sharon Lee for definitely over 30 years. I got married in my 30s.
Okay.
And it is wild because when I first saw your message to me, I had this moment of like, am I messaging myself? Like who, like what, like you just kind of think it's like your name again. And same thing on Zoom. It's like when you're searching for, because in our class, we've got quite a number of people. And so when I was looking for my own name, I'm like, is that me? Is that someone else? Like, I just don't. And then what's really funny is like, we're both named Sharon Lee, and we could be twins, I guess, but we're still not twins, right?
Mentally, yes, 100%.
Yes, but like no one would think we were sisters in any way. It's just wild because it's kind of like I've met other Sharon Lees who are Asian as well, like, a Chinese background, and Lee is a very common last name. And so it's just completely wild to have a friend named Sharon Lee with blonde hair and, from a completely different family. So we are soul twins.
Soul twin. Oh, I like that. Yeah. I like that. I wonder why we talked for 2 hours the first time we called.
We were meant to be.
We were meant to be, for sure. Yeah. Well, okay. So just give a high level overview of kind of who you are and what you do professionally.
Yeah. I do so many things. So one thing I do is I teach digital marketing, which is how we met. My real day job, though, is I'm the founder and CEO of a digital marketing agency called SLTC, which stands for Sharon Lee Thony Consulting. That's what it started out as. Now we're just known as SLTC. We're based in New York, and we are about 30 people. We work with about 25 to 30 clients, and we primarily partner with e-commerce brands in the fashion, beauty, and lifestyle industry. So we do a lot of fun stuff there, everything from building out websites, creating brand identities, doing things on socials, running performance marketing ads on Google, on Facebook, on other things like that. And anything that's digital, we basically touch, and we help brands to grow using digital marketing, which is also something that I know you do quite a bit too, Sharon. So we really are kind of we are soulmates in one way or another. Yeah,
we are. But you have such an interesting story of how you got to this place in time, business-wise. So let's just start back a little bit about like how you got started, and I don't know. We'll slowly unpack the layers on all that. Yeah,
sure. I started off in advertising, traditional advertising, over 20 something years ago when I first graduated from college. So back in the day, there was television ads, commercials, radio ads, which I guess there still are. I'm like, yeah, we still listen to the radio.
Right.
Print ads and magazines, right? And like billboards and out of home and that kind of stuff. And that was sort of the beginning of my career. And then the world changed. And it's interesting. I like to talk about life 20 years ago because I think that with the advent of AI today, many of us who have had careers that are this long are experiencing the same thing of the landscape changing, the platforms changing, the way that people communicate changing. So one thing that changed pretty early in my career was TiVo. So TiVo back then, for those of us listening who have no idea what that word means, was this service where you could skip commercials. And so where you could record your shows and you didn't have to watch commercials anymore because you could just record them on demand and skip through. And it really impacted how marketers were communicating with their audiences because back then, big companies like Procter and Gamble and Unilever literally created shows. So I'm like getting into history now, but soap operas are named soap operas because Procter and Gamble produced those shows and they would place their products in the shows. And so you would see characters in the shows using Tide laundry detergent, for example, and that's a Procter and Gamble brand. You'd see a woman standing in her kitchen washing the dishes with, I don't remember which one they own, whether it's Palmolive or Dawn or something, but they would be the ones to create the actual soaps and products in these shows. So those were like the initial days of product placement, but basically television shows were created to market these products. And believe it or not, in the early 2000s, when this suddenly this new behavior of we don't have to watch commercials anymore came to be, it really shook up the marketing landscape and the advertising world. It was the first time that advertisers were thinking, how else can we communicate with people? So I worked in advertising at the time. I was pretty junior in my career. I knew nothing about anything. All I knew was that I just wanted to learn things and I would be willing to do things, right? And an opportunity. So I was working on the agency side, placing again, television commercials, other things like that. And an opportunity arose with Unilever, which again, big consumer packaged goods company. And they said, hey, we are forming a team that we're going to call the integrated marketing team. We're hiring people from different places, from the agency world, from the PR world, from the sponsorship world. And we are going to bring you guys together and give you 10% of our brand's budgets and let you do whatever you want as long as you don't spend it on television commercials. And I was like, cool.
Fun.
I'm like, I'm done. I'm out, right? I'm
game on.
The world. I'm going in. I'm going to see what happens. And it was amazing to be there at that time because we were just experimenting with stuff. So it was like, hey, go run some banner ads, which at the time were just like, a picture on a website. Static banners. You would have to like hand pick the websites. Like, you'd say, oh, I want to go advertise on People magazine. I don't even know if they had a website at the time, but like whatever websites, right? Just a static banner. We were doing some of that. We were doing some brand sponsorships and some other things. And it really kind of gave me a very large view of holistic marketing, but also how to innovate, how to be creative, and how to reach new audiences in new ways. And so seeing that pretty early in my career made me kind of realize that no matter what happens, the fundamentals are still the same, right? When it comes to brand marketing, when it comes to looking at your business, when it comes to scaling and growing, if you've got a great strategy, you can put those messages on the back of a bus, right? You can put it on a billboard if you needed to. You can put it, you can decide on sponsoring an athlete with your product and representing it that way. And so this is kind of a long-winded story. I know I'm talking about a lot of things all at once, but and so around that time as well, which was kind of cool. I always find myself in these interesting places, like kind of at right time, right place. At that same time, two big things happened at Unilever. They are, I should say, I worked on the campaign too, but Dove launched the campaign for Real Beauty. And it changed the way that women were portrayed in media. It changed the way that advertisers and beauty companies talked about beauty standards. It changed so much about how everyone engaged in these messages. And that again, right, being so young in my career, I was like, this is amazing too. So I was just kind of gleaning all these things. Another thing that happened kind of around the same time was not as big of a huge thing, but still kind of a change in behavior was Axe body wash launched in the US. And if you had told a man 20 something years ago that
Right.
he'd be using a body wash and not a bar soap, he would laugh, right? Like body
Yep.
wash was the least masculine thing
Right.
that anyone could think of.
Mhm.
So just having opportunities like that of, everything from how do we completely disrupt an industry, the beauty industry, with all these new
Mhm.
messages, with different visualizations of what beauty means, of
Right.
how we feel about ourselves, right? And really just talk about self-esteem now and not physical outcomes.
Mhm.
And then at the same time disrupting an industry of like, how do we get dudes to use a liquid soap on a poof?
Right, right. Well, and also segmenting those because a lot of that really talked to the younger men.
Yeah.
Funny story that you mentioned Axe body wash.
Yeah.
My older son, who's now in college,
Oh my gosh.
he was probably 8 years old, something like that.
Yeah.
And I remember he had seen an Axe body wash commercial,
Yeah.
and he asked me if I could buy some, and
Oh
I
my
was like,
gosh.
okay.
Yeah.
So I'm at the store by myself and I'm trying to figure out which label I could explain, that wasn't kind of on the edge. So I
Right.
don't remember which one I bought. So I, found
Yeah.
one or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I remember I picked him up after school and brought him home. And I said, oh, by the way, I stopped by the store today and I got you some Axe body wash. And he said, yes. And I was like, okay. And he goes, I'm going to take a man shower.
That's so great.
I love that. And what was so funny about it is like, you're going, men would never think
Would
about this. And here
never.
he's thinking of
Yeah.
himself as a man because he
Right.
is, so funny.
Right. Right.
But that's the power of advertising right there.
Yeah.
He totally
Yeah.
identified or wanted to identify with that, dude.
Right. That manly man dude. One of the things that we did on that particular one was we partnered with the Professional Bull Riding Association, because so one thing about soaps in the household and body washes is that the wives and the girlfriends usually they make those decisions, right, for the
Mhm.
household. Like in your case, your mom, you're buying it for your son, right?
Yep.
If you have a husband or a spouse or another male in the family, usually it's the woman making the decision.
Mhm.
So from a marketing perspective, it was how do we get women to want to buy a liquid soap for a man in their house and still make it seem sexy and masculine
Yep.
and empowering. So what do? You partner with bull riders because they're cowboys and they're
Yep.
getting super dirty, right? Like muddy and sweaty and all of that, but also, let's be honest, pretty sexy. And
Right.
so how do you do that? And so we had so much fun with that. I mean, it was like, shower talk time. And can you imagine like cowboys coming out from the shower, Sharon? You know what I mean? Just
Right.
that was
Right.
that I got to work on stuff like that. Anyway, all that said, okay. So how did I get to where I am? So I got to work on really fun stuff like that, cowboys and
Yes.
other things. Worked for a couple other places. One of the proudest organizations that I've worked for is the Girl Scouts. So I was there as well for 6 years, just kind of like probably like, definitely a pivotal time in my career, but 6 years working on branding and creative and right as the organization celebrated the 100th anniversary. So
Oh,
lots of
wow.
fun things like that. Yeah.
Hmm.
And then kind of grew in my career too, and realized at some point that I was probably going to top out without doing something else. Right. So,
Hmm.
and I was at the Girl Scouts at the time too. And it was interesting because it's a organization that's for women, obviously, and, all about empowering girls. And it was less so there. But as I kind of looked around at my peers and other opportunities, I noticed that to be at the VP level or above, you either had to be a man. This is just the truth of things,
Right.
um, or you had to have your MBA or some kind of a master's degree.
Yep.
And I was like, I can't be a man. I guess I could be a man, but like I didn't want to become. I'm very happy being a woman. Um, but I could get my MBA. And so I ended up going to business school at that time and fell in love with entrepreneurship and just really fell in love with the idea of being able to create your own business based on a
Mhm.
vision, being able to just write your own rules, being able to create an environment that you thought would be the best place for people to grow and thrive and that kind of thing. So it really kind of like stoked my fire for, wanting to explore some of that. and found myself kind of from the Girl Scouts working for a couple of startups, just working kind of in the social enterprise space and just trying to figure things out. And then eventually, as most women do, so my life also was evolving at the time where at that time, I was married. So in business school, I was working full time. I was going to school part time. So I was literally, and it was a part-time executive program. So I was living in New York City, going down to Philadelphia, which is where I got my MBA, and traveling on the Amtrak every other week, right? To get
Oh, of
down there. It was a 2-day every other weekend program, and you go there, you'd spend the night, all that stuff. While I'm in business school, I get pregnant.
course you did.
Of course I did. Because as if I couldn't add anything else to my plate,
Right.
the universe decided that would be a good time, right? Okay. If you'd asked me at the time if I had planned exactly that moment, I would have been honest and like, not exactly planned this the way out, but
Right.
that is how the cards fell.
Yep.
And so I find out I'm pregnant halfway through the program. I'm like, holy effing crap. Like,
Mhm.
what am I gonna do? You know?
Right. Right. Yeah,
So
you weren't right there seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. This is
right.
halfway through and you're
This is
going, okay, this is
Yeah, I'm
only going to
like,
get
I'm
harder.
halfway in. I have another year to go. Do I stay? Do I go? Like, or do I take a pause, a leave of absence? What am I gonna do?
Right.
And I really believe that things always fall into place as they should.
Mhm.
So this is like I literally find out I'm pregnant that week or whatever. I don't tell anyone because it's still pretty early on. Like it's just me and my husband who know what's going on. And I'm like, I don't know if I should tell my classmates. I'm not sure. No one at work knows yet because it's still so early. I get on the train, I go down to school. My classmate Stacy announces that she is pregnant. She's 3 months pregnant. And I was like,
Oh,
oh my gosh, congratulations. And what are you going to do? She was like, what do you mean? What am I going to do? I'm going to finish the program.
oh,
And I was like,
oh,
okay. And she's like, and she kind of looked at me funny. And I was like, wow, that's so amazing of you. And that's so brave. And I'm still like, "Oh, I want to say, you know? And so a
right.
few weeks later, when I was totally comfortable and like starting to share the news, I was like, I got to tell you something too. She was like, what? I was like, I'm pregnant too. She was like, this is amazing. So I ended up having a friend in the
Right.
program who
Partner
was
in
also
crime.
pregnant. Yeah, partner in crime. So we kind of went through it together. When we graduated, we carried our babies across stage to get the diploma.
Oh,
And those two babies were like the class's babies, right? Because like
mhm.
basically our classmates knew us as these big little waddling balls, not little, but these big waddling
Right.
balls. And then they met the babies when they came out because it all timed out that way. And so yeah, and the babies would join us, you know, for the weekend sometimes. And so it was just really nice. I have totally gone on a tangent. So
No,
I
but I also am thinking about that. I mean, that is a struggle that so many women go through. And in fact,
yeah,
I was at a women's conference literally, I think it was last week,
yeah.
and there was a woman on stage. She's an attorney. She is a solicitor general
Uh-huh.
for I think a county here in Georgia. So,
Yeah,
she's got her schooling in and all this kind of stuff. So she
sure.
was in law school, found out she was pregnant,
Hmm.
and same kind of thing. What am I going to do? And she's like, no turning back. I'm going to keep
Right.
going. Interestingly enough, like there were times where she had to go and do what are their trial whatever they're they
My
mock trials,
trial. Yeah, yeah.
and she had to bring her baby with her. And these people are like, what are you doing? And she was like, well, I'm kind of its food source. I don't know what
Right,
else you want me
right,
to do.
right. I'm
And
breastfeeding. The kid's just got to come with me. Right,
it's just a
exactly.
package
Yeah,
deal or
yeah,
whatever. And so she never apologized for it. She just, this is the way that it
it's
is, and just
great.
kind of paved her own way. She
Yeah,
said she had people actually that she re-encountered later in life that apologized to her and just
really.
said, I just really, I don't think I gave you the grace at that
Mhm.
time for what you were
Yeah,
going through. And I
yeah.
thought, well, that's interesting that they saw that, but for them to actually take the step to
To say
say,
that.
oh my gosh, I'm sorry I didn't give you more,
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
That was pretty cool. I mean, I think that really shows you that times are changing a little bit,
They are.
that's
They
good.
are. Yeah, it is interesting because I think that until you see someone do it, you almost as someone who hasn't done it yet or maybe, isn't in that life stage, it's hard to understand
Mhm.
one how hard it is, but then secondly, how how empowering it is for her to be able
Mhm.
to walk into a room and just say, this is who I am. This is my full self,
Yep.
right? I'm operating on 3 hours of sleep, My body is doing all sorts of crazy things that it's never done before.
Right.
I have literally an infant who every 2 hours needs to be fed from my body parts
Mm.
sometimes. And we just have to figure out a solution for all
Yep.
of this. And it's been interesting because I've had classmates too that I had gone to school with that have come back to me after, and they were like, I don't know how you and Stacy did it. It's just
Mhm.
kind of like, you guys just made it seem so easy. And it's one of those things where when you're in the moment, you just have to get it done. And that is, so going back to like professional careers and some other things, sometimes you're just in those rooms or in those moments where you have to make a decision, right? Do I keep
Mhm.
going in this way? Or do I do this other thing? Or, hey, I just got thrown for a loop because I wasn't expecting. I definitely did not plan. I can only say
Right.
it now. He's 13. I love him. He's in eighth grade, but and I've got a younger son as well. Like, love both my kids. I never planned to have a kid while I was in the middle of getting my
Oh,
MBA, like, working full time and all of that. But it was the best decision
right.
because it taught me how to juggle multiple things. It
Hmm.
taught me how to be really, really great about time management. And it
Right.
also taught me about how to say no to all of the things
Oh,
that just weren't important anymore. Because when you're in
right.
that state, like literally you have a living human being
Yep.
that you are tasked with, keeping alive,
Keeping on.
basically. Like
Well,
that's like your number one. Yeah,
right. It
yeah,
also goes to show that, for that person out there that thinks, okay, I have to have everything mapped out for my life plan
totally.
for it
Yeah,
has for it to be perfect,
yep.
just shows that life does not work that
Doesn't.
way. And
No,
also that person that goes a different route, that
right.
that kid that thinks that there's no other option after high school but to go to college, when
Yeah,
really there are technical school options, there are
totally.
mentorship options and other things like that. And you find your way, and there's so many people that go through, get their degree, hit that check mark, but
Yeah,
never use it because they go, oh my gosh, there's a networking opportunity that I took advantage of, or something
yeah,
like that. So just the fact that, I mean, who knows, they may have a cowboy in their future as well.
totally.
Totally.
You just never know.
You
Yeah,
never know. But
it's
I love that
true.
because, I mean, that's what these conversations are all about,
Yeah,
that, trying to figure out, as women, we've
yeah,
got even more obstacles, just like what you just said.
totally,
And
totally.
to be able to say, we have a community that we now can really kind of lean on a little bit, or
Yeah,
just say, it's okay. I'm doing something a little different. And
right,
that's
right.
just my life.
Right. And it is true. I think as women too, we tend to make that checklist, and we got
Hmm.
to check all the boxes
Yep.
before we take that next step, right? And then when we get to that next step, again, we check all the boxes before we take that next step. And I think a lot of it has to do with fear, if we're honest with ourselves,
Hmm.
right? It's
Hmm.
just fear of the unknown, it's fear of taking that risk, it's fear of being vulnerable.
Hmm.
And I'm not saying that we should always break the rules or never check the boxes, because
Right.
that's an extreme as well. But to
Right.
your point, like you don't have to have your whole act together. You don't have to have every little thing in place. And sometimes not having and not knowing what the answers are
Mhm.
opens you up to such bigger possibilities as well.
100%. Because
Mhm.
if you feel like you have to be above and beyond because otherwise you don't fit at that board table, you're
Right.
never going to get there. And so therefore
Exactly.
that fear or that just feeling of inferiority or whatever will always
Yeah.
hold you back. So
Yep.
yeah, if you just say, hey, I'm good enough and
Totally.
I belong here,
Yeah.
you're either going to make it or you're not, but
Right.
you're going to learn something along the way. And that's
Yeah.
very good if you at least try to go after that goal or something. So,
Totally.
but now,
Yeah.
okay, so you decided that you had limited choices. You needed to either be a man or you needed
Right.
to have an MBA. So dadgummit, you got that
Yeah. So I
MBA.
got my MBA, got pregnant, had a kid, became a mom, got my MBA and got an MOM degree too. And
Right.
so at this point in my career, I was juggling. And I mentioned that because after business school, now I had a baby, right? And
Hmm.
with that also comes like a prioritization of where your
Hmm.
focus is and just honestly how much energy you have. Like there's so
Yes.
much lore around women wanting to step down from the
Hmm.
workplace and when they become moms. And I'm like, maybe, but I don't think it's because of the reasons people think. I think it's
Hmm.
because it's exhausting
It
to
is.
raise a child.
Hmm.
And with that, the focus that she had pre-child versus post-child is completely different and has nothing to
100%.
do with her ambitions. It's really
Yep.
it's an energy
Mm-hmm.
budgeting thing
Right.
that happens. So with all that said, all of that was going on in my life. And I was also trying to pursue my other ambitions of, well, I do want to maybe start my own thing. I do want to explore some other things. So while I was now, and so going back to like the whole juggling motherhood thing while having my MBA, what I did realize was I could do a lot more than what I thought had I was capable of,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because life just forced that upon me in that way,
Right.
in the best way. But
Mm-hmm.
I was more than capable of managing that because I didn't break, nobody died, nobody got like, people got sick a little bit, but like nothing bad, nothing horrible happened.
Right. Right.
And if this big life-changing thing could happen, then maybe I actually had a lot more in me to do some other things. So with that, I went full out, ended up like getting like 5 different jobs doing different things. So for example, I was working full time, I was teaching part time, which I still do, and then I started to advise and consult with other friends within my network that were starting their businesses because so much of what I wanted to learn was how do you start a business and
Mm-hmm.
how do you get things done and that kind of thing. So what happens when that happens, ladies? You end up burning out, right? That didn't
Yep.
last for very long. I would
Right.
say maybe about 6 months to a year, 6 to 12 months in. At this point, I think maybe baby number 2 was on the way or something. So it was also like life kept going.
Right. It's kind
Sharon
of a
Lee,
blur.
yeah, just a blur. Sharon Lee Thony kept running. And then finally I was like, oh my gosh, I'm running on fumes. I don't know what to do. So I ended up talking to a friend, a contact of mine who I'm going to bring this back to the Girl Scouts for a second. So I had hired her at the Girl Scouts as a consultant. And her name is Stella. She's amazing. I'm going to send her this after we record it and it goes
Oh,
live.
fantastic.
I would just love for her to hear this. But so Stella was always one of the best team members we had ever had. She was smart, she was strategic, she just knew how to get things done, she was really efficient, and I just really loved working with her. And so I had said at some point, I think her contract with us was like, let's say it was 3 months. After the 3 months was up, I was leading the department at the time. So I was like, Stella, I would love to offer you a full-time job. And you know what she said? She said, thanks, but no thanks. I'd like to keep consulting. I don't want to work full time. And I was like, oh, okay.
Does not
And
compute.
I didn't ask her about it at the time because again,
Mhm.
it's like, I was the employer, she was the consultant. I can't be like, what's wrong with you?
Right? What are you
What on earth
thinking?
are you thinking? But I was like, oh, okay, that's fine. So should we just extend this another 3 months? She's like, yeah, that'd be great. So anyway, so she was always just a contractor for us and that kind of thing. We kept in touch. I ended up leaving the Girl Scouts. We kept in touch. My life was, again, I was running on fumes. I had no idea what the hell was happening with anything. And so I called up Stella. I was like, Stella, I need some advice. I'm like doing all these things. I have no idea what comes next. But I have a question for you because this has always stuck out in my mind. Why didn't you want a full-time job when we had offered you one? And she said, that's because the best thing in the world is to be your own boss. She goes, I'm never
Oh.
going back. I would never go back to working for somebody again, Sharon. And I was like,
Ooh.
tell me more about that. She was like, well, I'm a consultant. So I pick my own clients. I
Mhm.
set my own hours. I set my fees. I work with who I want to work with. I stop working with them if I don't want to work with them. If
Mhm.
I decide that if I decided a project is worth this much, I charge that month. If a month later, to me, it's worth twice as much, I charge that much. And I'm like, that is fascinating. And she was like, yeah, you should try it, she says to me. And I'm like, no way. I would never do something like that. Like, that is
Oh,
too risky. I
right.
like getting my paycheck on the 15th and the 30th. I
Right.
like having my 401k. I like having my benefits. I like all of the things. I like having
Mhm.
this title that I have. I like being
Right.
every 6 months or a year, whatever. I get a performance review. I get my little 3% raise, like, whatever. I like all that. I'm rolling my eyes because like, what was I saying? But I really, really believed that
Mhm.
that's where I meant to, where I belonged. And she was like, okay, how's everything else going? She says, like, not good.
Right. Right.
Not good. Because I've got this full-time job, but I've got all these other things. And she was like, I'm telling you, you should
Mhm.
really try it. So she says, well, what are you most afraid of?
Ooh,
I know,
good
I hate that question,
question.
right? And I said, you know what I'm afraid of? I said, I think I'm afraid of not having money.
Mhm. Sure.
I'm afraid of not having a steady paycheck is what I said. But what I
Right.
really meant was I'm afraid of just not having enough money in the bank, right?
Yep.
And she's like, okay, well, we can break that down though. She said, well, what would make you less fearful about that? And I said, maybe if I had like 3 months of expenses stocked away somewhere. She goes, great. I have a homework assignment. Go figure out how much money that is
Right.
and start to save up for that amount and then call me back. And I was like, all right. So, kind of saved up, put some money in the bank, whatever that, I don't even remember what that number was anymore, but there was some kind
Yeah.
of number. I ended up regrouping with her like a few months down the line. And she's like, perfect. So now are you ready to quit your job? No. She's
I'm
like,
still
okay.
hanging on.
What are you afraid of now, Sharon? Well, now I'm afraid that if I quit my job, I won't be able to make up for the income that I'm making because I had a pretty
Right.
cushy job. I was
Mhm.
making over 6 figures. Again, 401k bonus, all of that. And at this time, I have 2 kids at home. Like there are
Yeah.
mouths to feed. There are things that we need to do. She's like, okay, well, she says to me, well, you're working all these other jobs. How much money are you making from those jobs, and can that replace your full-time income? I was like, you know what? I don't even know.
Right. Right.
I
I
don't
don't have
even,
time to figure
I
this
don't
out at
even
this
like
point.
try to figure that out. She's like, okay, go figure that out
Mhm.
and see what the math looks like. Okay, perfect. So I go and I figure out what the math looks like. I'm like, so I'm kind of at around the same amount, or like I'm kind of at this amount. My salary is at that amount. She goes, perfect. Now go and now go and like focus more of your efforts on getting more clients, make them sustain, like outside of your full-time job. So get
Mhm.
your advising and your consulting clients, and see if you can build up a book of business. And when you get to the point where 3 months from where you are today, because she said you've got 3 months of savings in the bank,
Mhm.
right? So just
Yep.
look 3 months ahead. That's all you have to worry
Yeah.
about. When you
Yeah.
get to a point where you're 3 months away and you're making the same amount of income that your salary is making, then come back to me. Or she goes, then quit your job. She didn't even say come back to me, then go quit your job. So I was like, all right, hold on. What did she say? I was like, wait. So what she was asking me to do, she was asking me to do some forecasting, which I had no idea what that was at the time, right?
Exactly.
But so I sat down, made a spreadsheet, and you know what, Sharon? It turned out that I had enough clients in my pipeline and contracted that I was already forecasting to make more money than my full-time salary.
Wow. You're
So,
like, oh, Stella, you
Stella,
might know what you're
you
talking
might
about.
actually know, which is why you never accepted my job offer, right?
Right.
And
Exactly.
so I texted her and I was like, I'm there. And she was like, are you going to quit? I was like, I'm going to quit. So I quit my full-time job and I started what is now SLTC. I started this consulting agency. But at the time, again, I was in that mindset. I was just planning to quit my job and then just find independent clients on my own. That's all I was doing. Stella had empowered me to leave my job. That was like the
Right.
biggest thing, right?
Yep.
That alone was scary enough. I was like ready to do that. So
Mhm.
I quit my job, which was very scary, and ended up consulting full time, ended up making more money than I had ever made previous to that,
Awesome.
and ended up, it was really awesome. And I ended up needing more help because my clients were really happy with my work and they kept telling their other friends about us, or
Right.
me really, right? And they kept
Yep.
adding more projects to my plate. And even though I am very used to doing a million things at once, there was a point where I was like,
You're a
okay, there's
one man
only so much.
band.
Yeah, I'm a
Yep.
one woman show and there's only
Right.
so much I can do. But also
Mhm.
they were asking me to do things that I didn't know how to do. Like I don't know how to build, I still don't know how to build a website on my
Right.
own, right? Like I'm not like a graphic designer. So
Yeah. Yeah.
they were asking us or me really to do things. And I was like, I need to call in a friend.
Yep.
So I called in a couple of folks within my network that were highly talented. And again, at this time, I had worked in the industry for 15 to 20 years. So all the people that were doing the professional bull riding partnerships with me from way back when, right? All the people that were running around
Right.
and like shipping advertising tapes to stations when I was back at Saatchi and Saatchi, like all of my great people from Girl Scouts, whatever, all the
Yep.
people I had gathered along the way were the first people I called to say,
Mhm.
hey, I'm kind of doing this agency thing, sort of. Like, do you have a couple of hours every week? Can I get you to help me work on this project? And
Mhm.
people were like, sure, totally, yes. So this was back in 2018.
Okay.
Quickly we grew. Digital marketing was like, it's always been, I mean, the
Mhm.
last 10 years or so have been pretty relevant, but what made it the most relevant was in 2020. So 2020 came,
Mhm.
COVID came, and everyone needed a website. There was like just no reason for you not to have a website anymore.
Right. You had to have a presence out in the world because you were not out in the world.
Yeah.
Yes.
You had to have a website. You had to have an online ordering system.
Yep.
Even if you were the grocery store, you needed like curbside delivery, which had to be kind of automated in some way.
Right.
So everyone needed something digital. And we just expanded so fast. It was absolutely crazy.
And 2020 is one of those things that it is such a fork in the road. There are some people that were so busy, they had pivoted in some way and adapted and just could not breathe. And then the others are like, okay, feast or famine here. How am I going to feed my family? So it is just so interesting that you went so gangbusters during that time. And a lot of people, think about those manufacturers that completely changed manufacturing lines to, all of that kind of stuff. It was just such a, that just shows the ingenuity and the grit out there that is just amazing. So I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I just had to stop because that is such a pivotal moment.
Yeah. It's like all these, again, it's sort of a little bit of, are you at the right place in the right time? Do you have the right mindset when change has to happen? Mm-hmm. Are you ready? Are you just ready to make a change in one way or another?
Did you get pregnant again?
No.
I'm just kidding. It's like you needed one more thing on your plate during all that time.
I know. It's like, and then I had my third child. I've got 2 right now.
Plenty.
I mean, who knows what's going to, now that we've had this, so guess what?
I need to be your first call.
Really, really small chance, but it happened. So 2020 happened. So it made me kind of pause as a business leader and owner as well, because I think it was like, I can't remember the exact date, but everybody probably remembers sometime that first week of March was when they announced that the whole world was going to shut down. Mm-hmm. And that same week, we lost about 25% of our clients in a day. I mean, literally, it was like my phone was ringing. I was receiving emails and they were like, we're so sorry. We can't even give you our 30 days notice. We have to terminate today. Like we literally, like, it's everything from like, I just fired half my staff. We've got to pull marketing, and
nothing you can say.
Nothing I can say, right? I'm a service provider. I understand the state of the world. I'm not going to be like, no, I'm still going to make you pay your invoices for the rest of the contract. Like, of course, COVID. But it made me realize that I needed to figure out a plan for the business. Because up until then, I was kind of just flying by the seat of my pants. It was just fun. It was like, this is happening, that's happening, right? So I was like, I need a long-term succession plan. I don't know what that is. Fast forward. Around the same time, I was having some pretty interesting conversations with Fiverr. I was doing some work for them. And my agency itself, because we kind of were structured the way we were all freelancers. So, I mean, I was the owner of the business, but everyone within the agency was basically an independent contractor. And so I was managing this team of about 25 freelancers and at the same time doing some projects for Fiverr, which happens to be the largest freelancing marketplace in the world.
Right.
And they were like, you have an agency, right? I was like, I do. And they were watching what we were doing on their platform too, because we were selling services on Fiverr. So they had some insight into the amount of business we were generating for ourselves. But they were really fascinated about how I was able to manage a team of 20 to 25 people kind of manually, because it was really just like spreadsheets and a Slack channel and,
pre-AI at this point.
Pre-AI, pre all of the systems. And they were like, we've got some big plans in our future and we'd love to know if you'd be interested. And we really respect what you're building and it's pretty neat, what you've done. And I think they also kind of got to know me a little bit too, as a business person. And they had said, we'd wondering if you'd be interested in selling your company.
Wow.
It was kind of like that moment when I was like, oh my God, like, am I really pregnant? Like, is this really happening right now? Like right now to me, like at this moment, like, do you have the right person,
Yes.
And it was like this amazing thing. I remember I called my dad. It's so funny, like no matter how old you are, right?
Right.
When things like that happen, if your dad's still in your life, you just call your dad. So I'm like, Dad, guess what? Fiverr just offered to buy my company. And he was like, are you sure they're not scamming you? I was like, Dad,
right.
It's not a
scam. Because I mean, you don't think everybody knows of Fiverr and how to like book someone on Fiverr, but you don't think of the actual company. Of Fiverr calling you, that's like Facebook. I mean, is there really a human that works there? It's the same kind of, anyway, so that's just so funny.
And I also think that as a woman business owner, especially if you're a solopreneur, you
Mhm.
don't think of your business as being valuable.
Right.
I think that's
Right.
really like, I was like, what are they trying to buy here? Like, I don't understand what they're trying to buy. It's not like I've made something, like, I
Right.
don't
A
have a
product.
widget that they can
Hmm.
like take, right? I'm
Yep.
like, I'm managing people. I've got some spreadsheets. We've got some contracts. Money comes in and out. I mean, that's a
Yeah.
business, but like,
Yeah.
I didn't see it
Yeah.
like that.
For sure.
Um, and so they offered to buy it again, just like going on any other wild ride. And again, not having all the boxes checked, because I definitely did not have my boxes checked for this. I
Mhm.
was like, we're doing it. We're going all in. And I sold my business to Fiverr during COVID, which was crazy. And the best thing I could have ever done for myself, really, and my family, because like it catapulted us into a different realm of existence, but it
Mhm.
elevated my own understanding of business and
Right.
partnerships and strategy and really kind of helping and empowering women too, because something that I learned in my acquisition process was that number one, I personally didn't know anybody in my immediate network that had ever sold their business. I'm
Mhm.
just, even
Yep.
though I have an MBA from an Ivy League school where those are the networks where this stuff happens, like
Mhm.
within my own personal network, like my parents are immigrants, they
Right.
have a business too, but I don't think they've ever thought about selling it. It's
Right.
just, it's something that makes money right now. And then when they're retired, they're going to retire. And
Yep.
in my own immediate circle, even if women had their own businesses, it wasn't, no one's ever thought of it as like, this is an asset that's worth
That's right.
millions, billions, gazillions,
Right.
or even just a couple hundred thousands, right?
Sure.
But more money than what I'm making now, and I can actually leverage that.
Mhm.
No one ever taught me that. And I went to Wharton, you guys. Wharton Business School. Someone
Right.
should teach you that, right? In
Right.
that way. I mean, I learned about mergers and acquisitions, but like
Sure. But it's all
IBM,
intangible. It's out
right?
there. It's the big stuff. It's
It's the
not
big
the
Fortune 100. It's
Mhm.
not the little like Sharon Lee Thony consulting. Like someone's
Right.
gonna want to buy that one day. So anyway, all that to say. So what it really helped me with was kind of also solidifying how I wanted this experience to hopefully help other people going
Hmm.
forward. Because I found myself really in the dark with what to do next, who to talk to, like what lawyer do you hire for something like this? What
Right.
kinds of conversations do you have with your accountant?
Mhm.
I didn't have the right ones, to be honest, you guys. I paid a lot in taxes. It was crazy. Like, just if I could do it all over again, and I
Yeah.
will one day, but like, all of that. So, anyway, so all of that was happening. So I ended up working at Fiverr as well, starting in 2020. And we were a wholly owned subsidiary of Fiverr for 5 years. And in 2025, a couple of things happened. Taylor Swift, this is so silly, but Taylor Swift bought her masters back. And I was like, that's really cool that all the
Mhm.
music she made that
Right.
didn't belong to her for some period of time is now all hers. Ariana Grande had launched a makeup line and she sold it and she bought it back in 2025 because the makeup line wasn't doing well. And so I started to research all these women. Again, are they real people? I don't know. But it's like
Right.
again, it's like when you don't have people in your network, your immediate
Yeah.
network, you're just looking, right, at what's
Hmm.
out there. I
Yeah.
started to research the amount of times that companies were sold and then purchased back, and especially the amount of women that tend to do it. And what I found was not a lot, but a fair number of women have bought their businesses back, especially when the businesses were being managed differently than what they envisioned
Right.
or weren't doing well. And when they reclaimed that business back, they were able to take that and scale it and find another chapter. So
Hmm.
the beginning of this year, just a couple months ago, I did the same thing. I bought my
Love it.
company back after selling it. And so now I am again the owner and founder, which I've always been, of SLTC. And we're continuing to function as a digital marketing agency. We're continuing to grow. We're continuing to work with the same clients. And it's been an amazing ride of just kind of twists and turns and unexpected
Yeah.
surprises. But it's been so much fun while doing it.
So you mentioned like Ariana Grande and the fact that her when she had sold her business, it wasn't doing as well, and therefore she
Yeah.
wanted to get it back. Was there
Right.
something about how they were handling your business that made you say, I want to get it back? 'Cause this is something that I knew this part of the
Yeah.
story, but I don't
Yeah.
remember that piece of it
Yeah.
because that is really interesting. I've got another follow-up question
Yeah.
about that too, but
It
start
was
there.
I have to be honest. So when they bought the business, it kind of bought me with it. So I was always still in the leadership role. Like I was
Right.
still the CEO the whole time. I think the difference was mainly that um when you're a wholly owned subsidiary, especially of a public company,
Mhm.
there are certain KPIs you need to meet,
Right.
right? Like it's all numbers at that point. And
Hmm.
so we had to make certain decisions that were good for the business, but
Right.
they might not have been the best thing for the people or the
Hmm.
culture or the
Right.
longevity of certain beliefs. And I think the core difference, honestly, in the last 2 months that I've reclaimed ownership is we're saying no a lot more to
Yep.
projects that aren't the right fit.
Right. Staying in your
We're
lane.
yeah,
Hmm.
and we're saying no a lot more to just different things that I think before I would have said yes to, mainly because I had the pressure of a
Right.
parent company over me, and I just had to be like, yes, we will take on these things, or like, yes, we'll hire 5 more people, right? And those might
Right.
not always be the right decisions. So
Mhm.
I think that was key. I also think that longer term, I knew that I wasn't planning to stay there forever. I mean, Fiverr was a great company and I learned so much there, but I
Mhm.
knew I didn't want to be an employee again. So yes, Stella, if you're listening, like long-term impact on me. I thought a 9 to 5, a 401k, all of that stuff was like the dream before. And
Right.
after running your own thing and being an employee again, it's a big shift.
Hmm.
And it wasn't one that I was prepared for until I was in that situation. I was like, wow, I have a boss again. I
Right.
literally am filling out a performance review again. And so I knew that my time was limited there.
Mhm.
But what I didn't know, and I can't speak for Fiverr, but what I didn't know was what the future of SLTC would be.
Right.
And it was,
Well, go
yeah.
ahead.
Oh, and it's one of those things where when women start businesses, it's very much like it's our baby,
Mhm.
right?
Oh, for sure.
And so I was I was willing to like it's almost like I was willing to let them borrow my baby for a while, but like unless I knew that the baby would be on a track to be taken
Hmm.
care of forever, I wasn't comfortable with like
Right.
walking away either. So I knew I
Uh,
didn't want to leave Fiverr and leave SLTC there without a plan in place for her as if she's alive. But like so
exactly.
without that, I was also like, let me just get my baby back then,
Hmm.
right? Like thanks for the time. I'm gonna take her back. At this point, she's a toddler, so she's probably walking. But so I, kind of
Right.
take her, put her on her tricycle, and we're gonna like kind of go on to the
It's
next
funny.
part of the journey. And I think it just worked out in that way, and it worked out really well for
Mhm.
both sides. Yeah.
Well, I knew that you stayed on as CEO, but I thought it was for a select period of time. I didn't realize that you were there the whole time until you took it back. Because
Yeah.
what I was going to ask you was when you came back into the business, of course, when you did buy it back, you did come into a different role. I mean,
Yeah.
as far as like how your
Being the
clients see you.
owner again, and yeah,
Right. But I
totally.
was
Yeah.
curious about like any of the clients that kind of stayed through it all. Like how are they feeling about it all? And,
Yeah. You know
what
what's
was their
funny? So
experience?
I think the good thing is the way that we were purchased and also the way that we operated within Fiverr. Luckily, we were literally a wholly owned subsidiary. So we were our own little entity, right?
Hmm.
And so even though I was interfacing with the parent company a bunch, my team and clients and other things were really just in their own little pocket of the
Okay.
universe. Um, there are other, like, finance was involved, legal was involved, right? There were corporate things that were kind of surrounding the business to support it, but the clients really didn't. They weren't impacted too much at all, which was nice because I
Which is
think in
very
any
good.
transition like that, like
Hmm.
and I think it actually is a huge testament to how great my team has been because without that trust, I think clients probably would have left in
Right.
an ownership change,
For
but
sure.
not much, like really not. I tried to make it as minimally disruptive as possible. And we're still getting our bearings. I mean,
Right.
every now and then I'll like turn the corner and be like, oh, there's a cobweb there. I forgot about that. Or like, oh, like there's this hidden door here. I forget, it's like
Right.
it is stepping back in, even though I've been there the whole time. It's like things were built when I wasn't
Mhm.
looking, kind of, or like things were taken away. So it's like, you take a step and then you fall because there's no more step there. And
Yeah.
it's that kind of thing. Yeah.
Well, you're getting your bearings and all of that. And of course,
Right.
the climate of the digital landscape is changing every day at
Right.
this point. So, before it was kind of like, oh, I'm learning how to forecast financially. You've
Right.
learned through some of that, but now
Yeah,
it's forecasting where is the industry going to go? And you've
totally.
got this new baby back that's now a
Right.
toddler. And what are
Right.
you going to do with her? And what is that vision for her? So what are you thinking that might be a slightly different pivot or shift? And you can announce it right here on Empowered
Right. Amazing. Well,
Amazing.
it's funny. It's like these things that don't usually become like these, like it's not like these big ideas come out of
Right.
nowhere, but little
Right.
things, right? So
Hmm.
I've recently taught myself how to code using Claude Code.
Okay. Yeah.
And so things like forecasts and other things, those are all now being pulled through AI with systems that I'm personally even just building for the agency.
Amazing.
And I
Who would
know
have
nothing
thought?
about, right? Who would have thought? Like, I know nothing about code at all.
Right.
I just know how to prompt some AI, and AI is like then telling me how to do these
Yep.
things. And so I'm really excited about trying to figure out how to scale the business using more AI and automations.
Hmm.
I'm super excited about helping our clients to experiment with just other ways of communicating. Things are changing so much. It's like the
Yeah.
latest thing is like Reddit is where you need to be for
Yeah.
everything, and like so we're just, we're just doing fun experiments like that. But I think just constantly having this growth mindset kind of
Hmm.
helps to stay ahead of things, but also kind of helps to create new avenues and new paths. And something I would like to do, probably not in the near future, is probably look to buy a company um, for like within SLTC. So expand SLTC through an
Right.
acquisition of another company. And that's something I would have even known to do
Right.
until this point, right? So it's like it's kind of a really amazing thing. It's kind of like, you put one foot ahead of another as you're on this hike or this journey.
Right.
And then when you take a moment to look back, it's only then that you realize how far you've come. You don't even realize you're like that far up the mountain because you're just looking
Exactly.
ahead of like, oh my gosh, how do I get to that next step?
Right.
And it is
Right.
a moment of like, who on earth, like, if you had told me while I was talking to Stella, you know, this was probably
Right.
like 8 to 10 years ago now, that like one day I'd be sitting on a podcast talking to someone with my exact same name and being like, I'm gonna buy a company one day. Like, who the hell do you think you
What
are,
are you
Sharon?
talking about?
What are you
But
talking
it's
about?
so funny because, so often just like back then when you were talking to Stella, you had all of this other consulting going on inside, you had a
Right.
full-time job, you
Yeah.
had kids that were young and
Yeah.
all of this. And then you get into this point where you're running a business, you're trying to meet what Wall Street needs you to do and
Yeah.
all these kinds of things. And it's
Yeah.
like, when you were talking about the climb, it's more like a sprint. It's like, do you take the time to take a deep breath? Because
Right.
sure, maybe you could sit back and think about, oh, I might want to buy a business or whatever, but
Yeah.
who's got the time to even think about all of that? Because it's just like, oh, I got to
It's
put out
on
this
to the next
fire and
thing.
this fire.
Yeah.
So kudos for you to be able to step back just a minute and kind of assess where you are and
Yeah.
go, these are possibilities,
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. I think something else that you just triggered a thought about, my entrepreneur friends and I have been talking a lot about this, female founders, and um how there's a glamorization of what it means to be a female entrepreneur in today's world, right? So there's so much about, I run my own business and my hair's always perfect and my makeup's always done and I'm always wearing pretty clothes. And there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of that out there. And I think what we don't talk about enough is it's actually really hard and not glamorous at
Right.
all. You know,
Right.
you see on Instagram the
Yeah.
fully made up woman who's wearing like you and I are now, right?
Yeah.
We're like dressed for the podcast and
Right.
we both have businesses of our own and we're doing great and thank goodness we are.
Mm-hmm.
But what you don't see is like the fact that she's probably like crying in the shower on some
Right.
mornings, right? Or she like
Right.
gets that email from the client that has like canceled their contract or the investor that's pulling out or
Right
the
at the wrong
partner that
time when that
right at the wrong
happens.
time, right? Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Or like the partner that's decided that they don't want to do business with her anymore and
Right.
she doesn't know what to do, or you don't see when she's like applied for that bank loan that
Mm-hmm.
she needs for that another round of inventory and she gets rejected for one reason or another. Those are the things I think that we should be focusing on because it's those moments that help you to get through those challenges and also
Mm-hmm.
kind of where we can kind of come together as a community to really empower each
Right.
other. right?
When
And
you
so,
create this female founder entrepreneur roundtable,
yeah,
I want to be your first member of this
okay.
organization.
You are so invited to it. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's
But
going to be
that's so
ugly.
true.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, we come in our pajamas and
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
but I do think that woman that thinks about, oh, I've got this idea, but I'm never going to be able to accomplish it because look at Sharon Lee right there.
Right.
Sharon Lee Thony. She
Yes.
did all of this and success begets success. And
Yeah.
I'm not successful, but I look at you and you're successful. So you're always going to be successful. And the reality is, right, she doesn't know that you're crying in the shower and you're
Right.
stressing over this and you're trying to
Right.
figure out how to make, and then at the same time, you still got to get your kid to the football
Exactly.
practice or whatever, or maybe
Yeah.
your dog comes over and starts sniffing your arm while you're talking. But anyway, but I mean, it's so true. I mean, that's the person that, that Stella
Exactly.
actually talked to in you, which
Right.
is phenomenal.
It's true. When I talk to women that have an idea and for whatever reason they're not ready to start it yet, I usually say, "Well, have you ever babysat before?" And they're like, "Yeah." "Have you ever tutored before?" "Yeah." Have you, I don't know, been a lifeguard? Have you done this?
Right.
Have you done anything where someone has paid you for your talents and your services before? And 100% of the time the answer is yes, because you've done some job like that
Yeah.
before. And then I say to her, then you've been an entrepreneur before. I'm going to start to cry, but like those are entrepreneurial
Mhm.
efforts. If
Absolutely.
you're a babysitter and you say I'm charging $5 an hour, $10 an hour, babysitters
Right.
charge like $20 an hour now,
I
right?
know, right.
Like, and you're charging and you're stating your terms and you're stating your prices and you are going and you're finding clients, then you have a business. I am going to cry. And I
Oh,
just don't think enough women think of themselves that way
no.
or know that or have the confidence for that. So
Or
anyway,
even just take the time to assess it, just like we were
yeah,
talking about before.
exactly. Exactly. Anyway, it is a big passion of mine to kind of, yes, to inspire, but I don't want to inspire in a way where people feel like they have to be perfect before
Exactly.
they
It's
take
the
those. Yeah.
authenticity that is so important right now to
Yeah.
say, I don't have it all figured out. I don't know what tomorrow brings. Right now, I
Exactly.
can do this and I can do this well. I
Yep.
don't know what the world's going to hit me with tomorrow. I don't know anything else, but you know, that's good enough. That's good
Right.
enough for
Right.
today. So back to the CEO roundtable that I can't quite get out of my head.
Yes.
I'm thinking that maybe on our first get together, we've got to bring Stella on and she gets an award.
Oh, definitely. Stella's definitely gonna get an award.
We ain't got it all figured out,
That's
but
right. That's
you're
right.
our
Yep.
trailblazer,
Yep.
girlfriend.
Exactly. Exactly. The unchecked list award or something. It's gonna be called something,
Oh,
right?
I like that. That's
Yes.
right. The unaward award,
Yes.
the
Yes.
non-planned plan. It's
Yes.
all,
The
yes.
unplanned planned award. Yep.
Oh my gosh. Well,
Totally.
so as we start wrapping up today, this has been so fun. I love your story. I love having met you, and it was so serendipitous that we just happened to be on a video call together and
Yeah.
just had to be together. So that's so fantastic. But tell me what you do outside of all of the craziness of running a business and having two kids and, all of this. How do you unwind and just go have some fun?
I don't have fun, Sharon. I'm just kidding. I do, so I do a lot of different things. I love traveling.
Hmm.
Usually it's with my family, and so
Yeah.
we do a lot of that. We're about to go to Bali in a few weeks, which has been on my bucket list for decades, literally. I read Eat,
Yeah.
Pray, Love many, many years ago, and we're finally going, and I'm super excited about that. On like a smaller scale, I have an indoor hydroponic garden. It's actually Garden with a Y. That's the brand that I use. And I recently started growing strawberries. And so that's been a lot of fun too, of just
Yeah.
kind of, planting a seed, watching it grow, and then harvesting the fruit from it. So
Right.
just little things like that.
A little
Um,
different than all the sourdough people out there right
yes,
now that
yes.
are.
I love eating sourdough, but it's just too much work to make it.
It is
So
too
yeah,
much work.
yeah,
It is
no.
funny on these questions. I could ask you rapid fire all of these business questions all day
Yeah,
long, and you could take them and you could
yeah,
go with it. And
yeah.
then I ask you, how do you
I
relax?
know,
And it's
like,
like, oh,
I don't know.
but you're not alone because that seems
Yeah,
to always be the one that stumps somebody like, oh,
right.
let me think about this. I guess I like to sit back with a good book. Is that the right answer? If it's true, sure.
And
So
also
funny.
binge watching bad shows, or maybe just binge watching any shows, but like Bridgerton's been great. I've been watching Love Story recently, the story of JFK Jr. and Carolyn Bessette.
I have not watched that yet. I just
You
saw that.
would
Yes.
love that show.
Okay.
It's really good because it just takes you back to the 90s, and
Oh,
yeah.
that's so fun.
Really
I
good.
love to cook and put on a show like that and just like cook something big.
Yeah.
So you're in the kitchen for a long
Yeah, for a
time
long
and then
time.
you're just it's just a night. So that's
Exactly.
one of my favorite things.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. Well, this has been so much fun. I look
Thank
forward to
you.
seeing you on our weekly calls for the
Thank
next
you.
little bit. And but thank you for sharing your story because I mean,
Of course.
there was a lot to it and it just needed to be told. I just love every bit of it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It was really good to chat with you.
Sounds good. We'll see you soon.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for watching this episode of Empowered Women. If you enjoyed our conversation, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share so other women leaders can benefit too. I'd love to hear from you. Send your questions, suggestions, or compliments to Sharon at pinnaclestrategicadvisors.net. The Empowered Women Podcast is executive produced by me, Sharon Lee. See you next time.